My car had been repossessed twice. I worked at a call center that literally closed up overnight, owing me thousands of dollars because I was really good at closing on the phone. And my life was in shambles. I was literally sleeping on the couch at a buddy's place and could barely, like, I would have to borrow gas money to go to go do a gig, to go do a show, right? And it was like that for quite a while.
That is Jonathan Pritchard this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. What's up, everybody? Thank you for coming to hang out with me this week for another episode here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Here in the States, and if you celebrate Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, some holidays have already passed, some holidays are gearing up, and things are getting a little crazy. I know they are for me. The shopping, the running around, making sure you have all of the boxes checked off. Everybody's gifts are going to be here. It's a very exciting time, but it is also a very stressful and busy time. So I hope that while you are taking a minute to hang out with me and with our guest today, Jonathan, that you are out doing some of these things and getting some of your to-do list done for the holiday season as well. So this week, my guest is Jonathan Pritchard, and Jonathan is a mentalist, and we get into what exactly a mentalist is, for starters, because I kind of didn't know what a mentalist was per se, like completely, and we also get into how he uses these techniques and these tools to teach companies to actually market their products better and relate to their customers even better. So it's a really, really interesting little trade and career that Jonathan has built for himself. And we get a chance to dive into that. And we get a chance to discuss how he got there and some of the things that he went through on his way there. And I don't want to give too much away because we definitely get into it in depth here in this interview. And so I want to let Jonathan tell that story. So without further ado, I would love to bring you this interview with Jonathan. All right.
Thank you.
Cool. So you ready to get going then?
Let's do this.
All right. Awesome. Well, I do want to first say thank you so much, Jonathan, for reaching out and getting in touch with me. Oddly enough, I wasn't really expecting the sort of response that I got from the podcast guest forum and the email blast that they did. But I got connected with over 45 people, and I would say 99% of them really fit with the kind of message that I'm going for on this podcast. And when I was reading your little blurb that you put in there, I was very, very intrigued to find out more about what you're up to. So thank you so much for sitting down with me to do this. And thanks for, submitting that forum so that we could get connected. I really appreciate all of the above.
Yeah, dude, you got it. Yeah, I'm kind of sitting on a unique selling position of there aren't that many people who do what I do, and even fewer that do it the way that I do it. So yeah, it's not a oversaturated market as of yet.
I would imagine so. Especially compared to some of the more traditional forms of what you're doing? And we'll definitely get into that later. I know that sounds kind of like, well, what the heck is he up to? But you're helping companies connect with their customers on a much different level, especially when it comes to marketing. And so I think that you're probably trying to fight and butt up against some of these more traditional forms of getting connected with customers.
Exactly. I give my clients more options. That's it. I just always am trying to open their eyes to different possibilities of achieving whatever it is that they want to happen.
Yeah, and so, well, like, let's get started with that right there, because you are a mentalist. And can you just start off by explaining what exactly a mentalist is for those of us who are completely ignorant to that, and what exactly a mentalist does?
Gotcha. A mentalist is basically a magician that has specialized in mind reading tricks. So, what they do is use applied psychology to make it look like they have psychic powers of predicting the future, influencing people's decisions, moving things with their mind, all that kind of stuff. But it's not that they're genuinely psychic, it's that they're really good communicators and information managers to create these impossible experiences for their audiences. So there's no voodoo, there's no mojo to it. It's just really good communication skills. So I used my skills to entertain audiences all over the world for the past 15, 20 years, and used it for personal gain. And then realized, wait a minute, all this applied psychology that I use on stage and in my own business as an entertainer, I could then teach and share all these techniques and strategies for companies to improve their effectiveness at whatever it is that they do.
Now,
So that's it.
you said that there's a lot of psychology involved, and there's like a lot of reading people. Do you have a background in psychology? Did you study psychology in college or anything like that?
I didn't. My college background is as a painter, and personally, I've been interested in visual communication and design my entire life. But think of it this way: magicians have essentially been experienced designers since before recorded history. Before recorded history, they were shaman. They were the kind of spiritual guide of a tribe or a community or a group of people. They were the first people to understand the malleability of the human mind and that all experience happens between your ears. And from that tradition, there's 10, 20,000 years of experiential background that magicians draw from in order to do what it is that they do. So magicians can make a tiger appear, and it is amazing to everybody on planet Earth. Whereas I like to point out, the psychology sciences have been rigorous for what, maybe 100 years, and a lot of the things that were tested in the 70s and form the foundation that most of these business consultants tap for their expert psychology background, a lot of that is having a replication crisis. So things done 40 years ago, we can't make happen again. So to me, relying solely on the college psychology research isn't nearly as robust as the tradition of the magician archetype, since it's been in our society since forever, right?
Yeah.
So to me, every single time that a magician does a magic show, every time a mentalist does a mind reading show, there are however many people are in that audience, that's more data points for that person to understand people better than any psychologist could, right? So take audience size times performances over years. then you've got that level understanding of people more than the psychologist who might do one research project every 5 to 10 years.
Well, and not only that, but it's also more current. Like you are interacting with people in real time, and I think, reading a book on something like you were saying that happened, 40 some years ago, 50 some years ago, sometimes even longer, it's not nearly as current. And so it sometimes can be difficult to apply the things that you're learning because you may have to adapt them anyway.
Right, right. And that's what I like to point to is, as a consultant or as a speaker, most speakers are talking about stories about their friends or events that never actually happened, right? They're parables, they're fables, they're anecdotes. But as a mentalist, I can involve my audience in the experience in real time so they get to experience it firsthand for themselves, see how amazing it is, and then I show them exactly how it works. And then they can have firsthand experience of understanding how powerful these techniques and ideas and strategies really are.
And so have been on stage, you've been on America's Got Talent, you've been, all over the place, but you weren't always this outward and this open. You were actually painfully shy as a child. So could you provide an example of just how shy you were as a child?
Absolutely. Because yeah, it's so weird. People try to find as many different excuses to ignore awesome insight, right? So they go, "Oh, I could never be a public speaker. It's easy for you because see you're a performer and it just comes so naturally." It's like, "Absolutely not. I am intensely introverted. Like I would much rather be at home with my feet up than be out at a party with 100 people." Right? So it's like I'm super introverted still, but I've learned to be outgoing. And when I was growing up, my favorite anecdote is I wouldn't even ask for ketchup at Wendy's. There was one time in particular that I'm remembering, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, would you go get me some ketchup? That'd be awesome." She's like, "Go get it yourself. You got feet. Go do it." I was like, I don't want to. I would rather go without something than talk to another human being." Right? Like that's how I'm wired. But I realized pretty early that it was the people who could talk to other people that got what they wanted. It was the people who could speak up for themselves that wound up succeeding. So I recognized early on, all right, if I want to get everything I've ever wanted out of life, I'm going to have to learn to be my own best advocate, which requires me speaking up for myself. So I deliberately put myself in super uncomfortable positions, i.e., in front of audiences, in the form of debate tournaments and taking debate as an elective every single time I could in high school. So it was really uncomfortable. It wasn't something I enjoyed, but it was something that I appreciated and understood the value of learning to be a public speaker, to be seen as an expert, as a leader, as a go-to person for solutions.
So when you came to this realization that it was the people that could talk to other people that got what they wanted, was there something specifically that happened that made you realize this, or was it multiple occasions that happened that light bulb kept going off?
Well, it was, it's just kind of like in junior high and high school, it's the popular kids that are popular, right? It's like, wait, what makes them popular? Why do they have so many friends? Why does everything go right for them, right? And then it's like, I'm funny. I've got all these things. What is it that I'm not doing that they are? Oh, they're talking to people. They're open to connection. They're willing to engage with people. Oh, okay, that's it. And then once I started putting myself out there, everything changed, right? Because you could have the best idea, you could have the best solution, you could have the best strategy for other people, but if you never say a word about it, how in the world are they supposed to know? They aren't mind readers, right? So you have to speak up, you have to share your ideas, you have to put it out into the world in order to get any sort of benefit from it. That's a huge failing, is that most people assume everybody else knows what they are thinking about and what they're capable of doing instead of showing the world what they're capable of.
But if you think about it, that's actually very, very high level thinking for somebody who is in middle school and high school. Because at that point in time, a lot of kids, and this is an assumption of mine, but obviously being someone who went through middle school and high
Hmm.
school, I mean, it's a pretty sound assumption, but a lot of kids would go the other way and they would become, depressed, and they would think, they would constantly dwell on the fact that there's these other peers, other kids, other students who are getting the things that they want, and they're not getting it, and it's, the universe isn't giving it to them. It could really just lead them down to a dark path. So for you to kind of have that knowledge and that ability to recognize that, no, it's not that, someone's telling me that I can't do this. It's really just that I'm not doing it. Like, to have that ability to recognize that within yourself, like that's pretty incredible at that age, and especially at that point in your life where, obviously as teenagers, we're all so emotional to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when I turned 13, all my uncles could juggle, my dad could juggle, and I was like, you know what? That's a really cool thing. I want to learn how to do that. So I learned how to juggle from my dad. Just took an afternoon. He goes, all right, here's how you do this. Go practice. So I'd go practice out in the driveway, and over a while, I eventually got to where I could juggle tennis balls without dropping them too much. So I had very, very rudimentary beginner level juggling skills. Well, then later that year, it's the summer, and I luck into being in a summer program that my mom had found. So she goes, all right, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to drop you off super early and then pick you up at the end of the workday, but you're going to be spending your day at this summer camp. I'm like, great, awesome. Well, the guy who was running the summer camp was a retired street performer. He was a clown and juggler and performer, and he retired to the mountains of North Carolina where I was, and he saw that I could juggle tennis balls, and he goes, "Hey, do you want to learn how to juggle pins?" It's like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." So then he shows me how to juggle pins, and then gives me a set of his old pins to work with. That they're all beat up and busted, but they still work good enough, right? So I learned how to juggle pins. Well, juggling is really cool in that you don't have to say anything for people to see how amazing it is, right? So you can juggle in front of people and they're going, "Holy, what? Look at there's a 13-year-old kid that's juggling pins. What in the world's going on here?" Right? So I got lots of positive feedback from demonstrating this skill without having to say anything or really feel like I was putting myself out there. So then I saw what kind of positive reinforcement I could get if I did the bare minimum of just doing something cool in front of people. And it was like, "Oh, all right, this is neat. I like this." And then I learned the script, the shtick of my mentor. He had a whole show put together of bits of business, as we like to call it, right? Just gags and jokes you can do. So then I started doing his jokes, and then I started getting his laughs. So I recognized that a mentor who's already been there and done that, figured it out, can just give you the path to getting what you want. So I start using his script and his stuff. I start getting his results. So then I also recognized the value of having a script, of having an ironclad, you know it forwards and back exactly what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, and how you're going to say it. So then, once I understood the script inside and out, I could perform and put all of my attention into connecting with my audience. and then making it fun in the moment for them. So then, once I know the script like that, something fun happens unexpectedly that I didn't plan for. I could then improv and relate in the moment with whatever it is that just happened. Now, if it works, that's great. But if it doesn't work, I know that I can go right back to my script and finish the performance, knowing that it's going to end exactly how I want it to. So the freedom of the moment comes from knowing exactly what you're going to do at every moment of the process, right? So that's why people going, well, I'm just going to wing it. I'll just feel it out, are planning to fail, right?
Yeah.
So you have to script every single moment of whatever process it is that you want an outcome to happen inside of, right?
Well, and just just as a little side note and a caveat, a majority of my audience, I would say, is endurance athletes, and so
Mm-hmm.
we are very type A, and we know exactly what it's like to have a plan and a script because from for a lot of us, from the moment we open our eyes until the moment we go to bed, it is on a schedule and we are following it. But for many of us, we also have lives outside of triathlon or running or
Mm-hmm.
biking or swimming, whatever it may be. So we have to have that ability to also adapt. And, if a kid gets sick or if somebody needs to be picked up from practice or if something goes a little bit extra, we need to be able to adapt to that as well. So I think that across the board, it's good to have a plan, but it's also good to be able to adapt that plan as you go along and then take a step back and see what works and what didn't work.
Exactly. It's kind of like somebody going, I want to run Boston. And you go, okay, how are you going to do that? I'll figure it out. You're like, you're not just going to feel this one out. All
Yeah.
right. You're going to need to, going to need to do some planning and setup. But if you've planned every single second with absolutely no leeway, then that's tyranny,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's constantly going between chaos and tyranny. Too much rigid structure, not enough structure, right? So it's like my sweetie, she's run Boston 2 times. She does, like, marathons are her thing. So it's kind of fun to be her mindset coach and bounce ideas off of her and talks with me. So yeah, it's super cool seeing inside the mind of endurance athletes and just what kind of mental and physical fortitude you need to do these impossible feats. But they're not impossible. There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of people doing them. So it's just a function of your strategy, your planning, and being open to the moment of whether or not it's serving your needs.
So, how did you discover that you had this skill of being able to convince people that you knew what they were thinking and you knew what was going on in their mind?
Right. So that's an offshoot of when I was 5 years old, I saw a magician on the Carson show. Like, that's how long ago this was. And the magician was cool, but his lovely assistants were even cooler. And I was like, wait a minute. If I do magic, then I get to work with beautiful people. All right, I know what I'm doing with the rest of my life. So I always grew up doing magic tricks for my family and torturing my parents. I'm like, hey, dad, pick a card. I've already picked 700 cards in just the last week alone, Jonathan. Just leave me alone. Like, no, just this is a different trick, I promise, right? So I just really made my family suffer. But I just stuck with it over the years because my parents were super understanding and encouraging, and just the patience of saints. They're phenomenal people for putting up with me. So I was always doing the magic tricks, but again, it didn't really help me get over my shyness because I would only do tricks for my family. So then the juggling got me in front of an audience. And then I realized, oh, so now I can kind of do a magic trick here and there. So then that was kind of the beginning of my performing career. And I got my first paid magic gig when I was 13 that summer. I got paid $200 to do magic tricks at some company's summer picnic party for all their employees, right? So that was my first gig, and the mentalism is a subs. It's like a segment of the magic umbrella, right? So magician is the umbrella term. Then you've got illusionist, which is the dude with a bunch of big props that pretty people jump in and out of, right? That kind of thing. Then you've got the card mechanic that does card tricks, and the coin guy, and you got the close up work, right? So there's just all these smaller niches of the magic world. And mentalism is the person that specialized in mind reading tricks. So what I loved about it was telling somebody what street they grew up on is terrifying. A teenager that could tell you where you grew up or the name of your first teacher, like that is scary. I don't care if you could find my card, but it is deeply disturbing that you know these details about me. Right. So then I was like, that's cool. Let's do more of that. So then that's why I specialized in the mentalism. And then in college, I got interested in exploring not only how these mind reading tricks work, but why they work in the first place. What is it about human psychology that is wrong that allows us to experience something we call magic? Because none of what I do, you can't point to it. It doesn't really exist. It is solely the experience in the minds of my audience. So I get paid for creating things that aren't real, that you can't point to, that you can't weigh, you can't measure, but are the most powerful experiences that people literally can't forget 10 years later.
So you must have been a whole lot of fun to bring to parties while you were in college.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I basically went to every single dorm party, every single anything. I was there just freaking people out. So I originally kind of got into it to meet amazing people and to get phone numbers of pretty women, and wound up terrifying the people I most wanted to talk to. I would freak out, and then they would stop talking to me. So it was kind of one of those getting into it for one reason and actually being completely backwards from what I thought the results would be.
but did you and your friends have like a little deal worked out where they could like take you to parties and you could like charge for these like tricks or anything like crazy like that?
Well, kind of, yeah. That is kind of how it started, because I was doing these dorm parties, and what I was really doing was sharpening and honing my repertoire, right? The list of tricks I could do on a moment's notice really well. So I start whittling down, oh, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, but oh, this one seems to work really well, and I actually like doing this one. So then I start doing fewer and fewer tricks, but I perform them more and more effectively. I get better at them. So there's this really cool definition of an amateur and a professional that I really love, which is an amateur does different tricks for the same people, and a professional does the same tricks for different people. So I start doing the same things over and over and over again for different and different and different people at all these different parties, and then realize that, oh, yeah, this is valuable. So then I started going to the nicest restaurants I could find and say, how long is your wait on Friday and Saturday night? And they'd be like, oh, man, sometimes they're waiting 30, 45 minutes. And I'm like, and sometimes they leave, right? And they go, yeah. Well, what if I could be in your lobby and be the life of the party, and that way the people in the lobby don't even realize it's been 30 minutes because they've been having so much fun, and then they go sit down. And then once the rush is done, I can walk around and then show people stuff one-on-one. What would that be worth to you? And the owners were like, that sounds amazing. And I started getting paid something like $200 a night, and it would be at the nicest places in town. So I also was like, to make this more fiscally bearable to you, one night I'll work for money. The second night I'll work for gift coupons, right? The gift certificates.
Yep.
So then I just am piling up hundreds of dollars worth of these gift certificates. So then when I'm doing this stuff at this restaurant at the nicest place in town, the people I would want to be working with and performing for are going to these restaurants. So then they're seeing me do what I do, and then they go, "Hey, do you do this at companies and businesses?" Like, absolutely. You got a party or an event? I'll be there. So then it's paid advertising to get me in touch with the people who could hire me. So it's paid advertising. But everybody in the equation is winning. Like, I'm getting paid by the restaurant's getting paid in terms of being a cool place to be that people want to go to. And then the people that are going there are seeing me and then going, "Oh, he could solve this problem in my business over here." So then I could be like, "Yeah." Or people would be like, "Hey, I've got a buddy of mine who needs to hire you." And then I would set up a meeting at that restaurant during the week, and I'd be like, "Let me treat you to lunch. Let me treat you to dinner." And then, yeah, whatever you want, I'm buying. So now there's this 18, 19-year-old kid who's taken out these business owners, paying $200 a pop. But for me, that's just one night's worth of work.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going, "Holy crap, this kid, he's rolling in it. So he's got to be really good." So that's how I started getting hired at businesses as a business consultant, helping companies connect with their people at trade shows, at conferences, at holiday parties. Anytime that people were gathering together, I would be kind of their mascot for hire and deliver their message in these mind-reading performances in a way that their audience literally couldn't forget it.
And it was it was a perfect storm too. So it was like this perfect storm, like you said, that everybody was benefiting from the equation, and that's when, as an entrepreneur or as a performer or as in anything, that's when things really work, when it's a perfect storm for everyone involved and when everyone involved benefits.
Exactly. What are you really good at? What is it really that you're good at? Right? You might think, "Oh, I'm good at magic tricks. Oh, I'm good at mind reading tricks." What I was really good at was connecting people, providing experiences as an excuse for people to connect with each other. And that was the really valuable thing. That's the second thing. What is it that you're actually good at that people value? And then find as many ways to tell as many different people as you possibly can that you can do that thing.
And I do want to just touch on something kind of briefly because, obviously with my background and my experience and really just the whole point of this show, you had at one point in time were a little overweight, I'd say. You lost about 45 pounds or so. Where in the equation did this come in, and do you feel like this increased your confidence when going in front of a crowd?
The losing 45 pounds?
Yeah, when did that come in, and did it happen to increase your confidence when you were getting up on stage and going in front of people?
Yeah, so all this stuff, I'm talking about it now with full 2020 hindsight of understanding how and why it was working, and then thought about, okay, so what are the universal principles that I could extrapolate and then apply across domains, right? So I've done a lot of thinking about this. When I was in it, it was just, what could I do, right? Scrambling for success. And not all of my life has been rainbows and butterflies. So I worked at Disney World for a while, and that's where I met Ariel. It was this gorgeous, amazing person who was quote unquote friends with Ariel, and we fell in love, dated, got married. So I always like to say, I got married, I got fat, I got divorced, I got fatter. Right? And my car had been repossessed twice. I worked at a call center that literally closed up overnight, owing me thousands of dollars because I was really good at closing on the phone. And my life was in shambles. I was literally sleeping on the couch at a buddy's place, and could barely, like, I would have to borrow gas money to go to go do a gig, to go do a show, right? And it was like that for quite a while. So my life fell apart, right? And I started practicing kung fu, and I was like, you know what? I've always been interested in martial arts. Maybe I need some discipline in my life. And that was exactly what I needed. So I made a commitment to myself that no matter what happens, no matter how little I do it, I'm at least going to do kung fu a little bit every day. And I don't want to skip a day. And that was something like 9 years ago now. And that was the practice of a discipline, of cultivating my own discipline in my life and starting to build that structure and personal accountability, and that process of making time to do kung fu and to study the laws of physics as they interact with the body and the mind. Then I started realizing, oh, this extends beyond just the physical. It also applies to the mental, to the emotional realm, to personal relationships, to business relationships. Oh, and here's how my experience as a mentalist informs all this other stuff. So it was really the beginning of my kung fu discipline that allowed me to start pulling my life out of the gutter and the shambles it had become, and finally gave me the skeleton to hang all these separate ideas into a unified thing that I could then share with the world.
And so I do want to dive into that a little bit deeper because so all of this time when you were performing and while you were in college and you're impressing all these businessmen and everything, you built up to this high, but then things went down after that.
Right. Because my personal integrity was out of alignment.
And
Right.
so
So
I was going to say, yeah, can you explain that a little bit more and talk to me about really what you mean with that?
yeah, um, I can't solve your business problem with some business tactics if it's actually your personal problems cropping up in your business. And spoiler alert, they're all your own personal problems cropping up in your business, right? So it was I was living out of alignment with what I knew I wanted out of life and how I wanted to live. So the person I married, wonderful, amazing human being, phenomenal person, and and I have absolutely nothing bad to say about her, right? Because I recognized she would make an amazing wife. She's an amazing person. And therefore, I think I should marry her. But our personal values were out of alignment, right? Our fundamental bedrock values weren't perfectly aligned. So there was a lot of friction, a lot of conflict, and I made choices in order to marry this person, right? I'm doing what I think I should be doing. And I got lots of social reinforcement, family reinforcement, friend reinforcement. Oh, this is wonderful. Great for you. Yeah, this is fantastic. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know about this. I kind of got cold feet, right? And then I did really, really stupid stuff like cheating on my wife. So I did that. And immediately the next day, I called her up because it was while I was on the road being Mr. Big Performer Man. I called her up and said, "Hey, I did this. This is a thing that just happened, and I can't lie to you. I'm I know I don't have the moral ground to stand on right now, but I at least don't want to be a liar." So I told her everything she needed to know in order to make a fully informed decision on whether or not she wanted to be in the relationship. And eventually we worked together, and I worked on myself to figure out that that was kind of a self-destruct button that I was pushing to get out of something that from the outside looked perfect and anybody else would want, but wasn't perfect for me. And I picked the worst way out possible, right? I didn't own up. I didn't voice my opinions, my problems. I didn't have the moral strength to stand up for myself before, during, or after getting married, right? So I was living kind of as a coward. I couldn't stand up for what I knew was in my heart of hearts, but I did what I thought I should be doing.
So I do have a question there for you because, as a kid, you were scared to go get ketchup at Wendy's. And do you think that this inner child came out and you were scared to address the issue that was at hand? And so instead of, addressing it and going to ask for the ketchup, you instead did something that would, quote unquote, take the problem away because, your wife would leave and you would get out of the situation, and it was the easier route, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. It is really tough living a life of integrity, of making all of your choices in perfect alignment with your values and principles, because you've got all of society telling you that you should do it this way. You have your friends telling you you should do it that way. You have your family telling you you should do it yet a different way. So it takes phenomenal personal strength and principles in order to live the life that you want to live the way that you want to live it, right? So you absolutely have to work at building that kind of strength of making your choices and living in accordance with the consequences of those choices, right? Of understanding the law of cause and effect in your own life. Not saying one thing and doing another, but saying and doing exactly the same thing.
So, now you're sleeping on a friend's couch. You've addressed these issues with your then wife. How do you start to build yourself back up aside from doing kung fu and really taking a look at yourself on the inside as well?
Yeah, I have just amazing friends that are incredible, that were there for me, and worked with them. What's neat about performers and illusionists, they always need people to move big, heavy boxes in and out of a theater. So, so I was a kind of professional roadie for a while, right? Just looking for odds and ends, ways to make bills and that kind of a thing. But I really just kind of doubled down on promoting the shows and being a performer and getting more gigs and then traveling. And that way I could do it now that I was divorced. I could travel and be gone without being absent, if that makes sense, right? So I don't have somebody at home going, you know what, this isn't how it was when we first got together. I didn't sign up for my husband being gone for weeks at a time, right? So I was now free to be on the road, to be more busy, to be doing more shows. But that lag between advertising and then booking the show that's 9 months from now, and then I got to survive from now to 9 months from now. Then I got to pay for all the travel to get out there, only to see that, oh, they don't have the check for me. Oh, that's great. So then maybe it'll come in 2 months. So now we're at 11 months after booking the engagement that I finally get paid for it. So it's a pretty brutal pay cycle. So you're constantly a year behind your effort versus the payoff.
Wow. Wow,
Yep.
that's that's crazy. I mean, I look at people who get paid like, monthly or quarterly and I'm like, wow, how could you, anticipate that, like, especially with, car repairs that pop up out of nowhere and stuff like that. But I can't even imagine being on basically a yearly pay scale.
Yep. Yep. And that's a super weird thing is the people that are in charge of paying me get paid every week, every 2 weeks. But the perception is, oh, he has a fun job. He just gets to play for a living. So this is just like play money. I'm sure he has a normal job that he has, right? If that's even something they think about. So then they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll have the check for you at the show. You show up and you do the gig. You you've already done the gig. You've already done the performance. You've already done the speech. You've already done the consulting. You've already rendered your services. And then they go, "Oh, we're on a bill 60. We didn't get it in on time. So we'll get it to you sometime soon." And I always want to be like, all right, let me hold your paycheck for 2 months and see how you like it.
Right.
But you can't be that jerk, right? You just have to be able to grin and bear it and like, oh yes, thank you. Oh yeah, I understand. I understand. Yes. Oh,
Uh-huh.
it's so difficult getting the paperwork in on time. It's like, yeah, yeah. It can be easy to get bitter about it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it can. And so, when did you realize that these skills that you've been using and, you know, messing with, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
um, when did you realize that these could actually be applied to business and you could use these to help businesses make more money?
the Here's the long story medium, right? So for 10 years, my number one market was colleges. Doing my comedy mind reading show, 70-minute Broadway level interactive improv comedy experience at colleges and universities all over the country. So I'm constantly working for college student audiences and blowing their minds, having fun. And then I've got posters after the show. If you want to hang out, let's form a line there and I'll sign posters. I want to meet everybody. So then I get this 45-minute long line of students that don't know I'm not a rock star. So to them, I am. Neat. So we're doing the rock star thing, signing autographs and stuff. And over the years, it eventually clicks. I hear over and over and over again some flavor of, oh my God, you are living the dream. I can't even imagine doing what you do. Now, they mean it as being a mentalist, as being in front of an audience, but they also mean it as not working a day job in a cubicle. So so it really hit me. I was like, "Oh, well, here's how I got started. I had a mentor that showed me the ropes. I've had strategies and plans, and here's how I make connections and network and offer value and do pitches, and here's how I do stuff." And then they'd just be like, "I've never thought of it like that," and that's the magic phrase to me. I love that, which is what gave rise to my saying. It's like, if you can change your mind, you can change your life, right? Because if you have new ways to think about something, you've now opened up the opportunities and possibilities without changing anything other than your thinking. Okay. So then a year or two later, I start getting emails from these students going, "Hey, you probably don't remember me, but you talked with me for 10 minutes and it totally changed my life for the better. Here's what I'm doing now. And it wouldn't have happened if you didn't share your ideas. Thank you so much." So then those were inadvertently my first coaching clients, right? Helping people think differently. Those are the first coaching clients. And then I thought, holy crap, this stuff is actually valuable. Okay, now I have to share it with the world. Instead of just using these techniques on stage to help people forget their problems for an hour, now I have to teach people how to do it in their own lives to solve their problems long term instead of just forgetting about them. So then I start doing coaching and saying that it's super valuable there, and then going, all right, how do I do this at scale? How do I do this for more people than just one-on-one? And then that's when I realized it's like, oh, this is business. This is business coaching. This is negotiation skills. This is sales process. This is presentation skills. And the more companies that I can help, the more employees I help, the more customers I help, those employees help, right? So good business helps everybody in the transaction. So for me, I have a moral obligation to help as many companies as I can to do better business with as many people as they can. And that's really when I started looking into business gurus and business consultants and business speakers and this, that, and the other thing. And then I start realizing, oh, all of these principles that they're talking about, they're all just talking about the psychology of this and that, but I know this stuff better than they do. All right, I'm going to eat their lunch. And then that's when I started shifting over into the business world. So I still do the entertaining. I still do the entertainment show. Then I speak about the psychology in my background as an MC and as a keynote speaker. And then the third thing is doing 2-day workshops centered on negotiation skills or presentation skills or sales processes or influence with integrity, right? Being able to influence people's decisions and without being sleazy about it. So those are the kind of three arms to my business is as an entertainer, as a speaker, and as a corporate soft skills trainer.
And being able to connect with people without being sleazy is very, very key, because I know personally, like, I can tell when you're being sleazy, and I'm just like, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, thanks for your time, A for effort, but like, you just seem like a sleazy used car salesman, and I don't want to do business with you, whether that's buy the soft pretzel that you're trying to sell me or like the house that you're trying to sell me. I don't care what it is.
Right. People are phenomenally good at reading the intentions of other people. We are already phenomenal mind readers in that way, right? And you can tell if the salesperson is in it for the sale versus in it to help you. And to me, that's what good business is. You solve a problem, you make the world a better place, and you provide more value for your client than the dollars you ask for in exchange. So you have a moral obligation to share your solutions with the world. You have an obligation to tell everybody about it. And the people that benefit from it have an obligation to exchange value for it. So to me, business is one of the most moral actions that human beings can engage in because it's value for value on both sides of the equation. And in that way, everybody's life is better afterwards. And to me, that's totally different than I got to make this sale. I got to meet my numbers. I gotta make my quotas. All right, so what can I say to get this person to give me dollars at any expense? I have to do this to benefit me. And people can see that coming a mile away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to ask you though, oftentimes people who they have a unique skill or any skill that they, have acquired, it can be difficult to teach others that skill sometimes. Like, so let's say, for example, as a good swimmer, you may be a Olympic or collegiate level swimmer. You may hold records where you went to school, but that doesn't necessarily make you a good swim coach or a good swim teacher. So how did you develop your skills of teaching these practices to businesses, other individuals, etc.?
Weirdly, day one, starting to do magic tricks. Because constantly, as a magician, as a mentalist, you're trying to figure out how to communicate what it is that you want them to do, and then saying it in a way that they can understand and act on it in a way that you want them to do it, right? Because you're constantly managing their behavior as the performer, even if it's as simple as pick a card. Well, how do you want them to pick a card? Do you want them to take a whole handful? Do you want them to just touch a card? Do you want them to take it out only halfway? So you have to be really particular with your language and be very specific, and then see all the ways it goes sideways and doesn't work. And you go, how in the world could somebody possibly misunderstand that? And never blaming the audience member, but always framing it in terms of, I didn't communicate clearly enough. So what do I need to say next time to make sure that problem never happens again? And that is education. That's teaching. That's sharing. So you develop an ability to be patient with people who are experiencing something for the first time that you've seen 1,000 times before. So you learn to slow down and see the experience through the eyes of somebody that's never seen it before. And that gives you a lot of empathy and the ability to present information so that they can appreciate it from absolute beginner's level, even though you're expert level at your skills.
Yeah, I guess I never would have really thought of magic that way, but
Boom!
it
My job. Yes.
it
I've never thought
completely
it.
makes
Yes.
sense. I mean, it completely makes sense. You do have to be very specific. I mean, a lot of people assume when you hold out a stack of cards and you say pick a card, any card, like we've seen it on TV a million times, like, oh, okay, he just wants me to pick one card. But, you do have to give very specific directions, and especially if you're working with college kids.
Exactly. Because I always like to say, all right, so these improv troops will go to companies and teach people improv thinking. Well, that's one-dimensional improv, thinking on your feet from suggestions given from the audience. Okay, that's not easy, but it's one-dimensional. Somebody just shouts something out. Okay, perfect. All right, now let me see you do that with the person on stage. They could run around. They could cup check you. They could turn their back on you. They could run around and knock over a chair. You don't know what they're going to do. Now handle that. Okay, now while you're handling that, now try to do sleight of hand in a way that nobody can see it happen, even though it's a room full of 3,000 people and they're all looking at you. Now, be able to do something that is under that level of scrutiny with somebody right next to you that could totally mess you up, who's constantly giving you stuff you've never experienced before. Now, manage that and tell me it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
So magic and mentalism is this insane animal that you are constantly riding to a successful conclusion when it looks like nothing is happening. And that is what makes it so difficult for the audience to appreciate, is they can't see how much they're not seeing of what all is going on behind the scenes, either in the performer's mind, in their hands, on all levels. There's so much that's going on that you're never aware of, which makes it difficult to appreciate how incredibly difficult this stupid thing is.
So before I ask you the last question here and we get wrapped up, I do want to give you the chance to share with people that are listening where they can get connected with you if they want to reach out for more, if they want to just say hi, whatever the case may be. Where are you active on social media?
The best place to go is _Pritchard on Twitter. That's me on Twitter as kind of like my speaker and that kind of stuff. So if you're on Twitter, that's where I'm most active. I'm almost never on Facebook because people I grew up with in high school aren't necessarily my clients. So they're not going to hire me, so it's not a place I want to go. So I tend to spend my time where people value my presence, which is mostly Twitter.
Okay.
But I'm always reachable on email. So Jonathan at likeamindreader.com. It just comes straight to me, and I want to hear from people. Don't talk yourself out of reaching out by any excuse. Oh, he's too busy. He's too whatever. I'm not too whatever. This is literally my job to hear from you. So please reach out and say hi.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And so my last question is, this is the Do It For Yourself podcast, and I have the opportunity to meet and interview people who have had the courage to take that first step, and it ultimately leads them in the direction for where they wanted to go. And it's in a direction of something that they've always wanted to do, but not in a selfish way. That's the message that I really, really try and convey, that this is not something that's selfish. It's just a dream or a goal that they've always had, and maybe people have said, you can't do that, or you should have a plan B, or, have you ever thought about such and such instead of what they want to do? Mm-hmm. So my question for you is, think back to that time when you were, on a friend's couch and, things were really probably super dark for you. Put yourself back in that position, and think of somebody who may be in that position as well. What do you say to them to help them take that first step in the direction that they want to go?
You have to appreciate where you are before you can go anywhere else. Really think about the choices you've made that have led you up to this moment, and until you fully appreciate and take ownership and responsibility for your choices, that's square one. Only then can you even start to work on improving your life.
I love it. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for reaching out and getting connected with me, and giving your time to come on to the podcast. I really appreciate that. I know that we went slightly longer than what was originally scheduled for, but it was one of those conversations that I was really enjoying, and I didn't want to, put a stop to it just because we were, originally scheduled for a certain period of time. So I do apologize for going over a little bit, but
hey, no worries. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my message and connect with your audience. So hello out there in podcast land. Thanks for listening to all this stuff, and hopefully it was of value and worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, my friends, that is my interview with Jonathan Pritchard. And oddly enough, when I was sitting down and doing some research for this particular episode, as I do for all of my episodes, the topic of Jonathan's divorce had not even come up when I was doing all of my research. So I'm very thankful that he opened up about that story and really got into that story and kind of everything that was going on with him at that point in his life, because I think that is very important for the listeners to hear. And I'm sure that there are some people out there who can relate to that. So I'm very thankful that Jonathan opened up and he shared that story. And I'm also very thankful to have someone who is outside of the realm that we are used to here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. I've had many people that have amazing weight loss stories. I have people who have built businesses, especially in the, triathlon and fitness industry. But that was someone who is truly doing it for themselves. That was way outside of the realm. So I really, really enjoyed that conversation with Jonathan. And I was very, very happy to get connected with him and be able to talk about kind of some of the things that he went through and how he's doing it for himself. That is 100% the point of this podcast. That is why I started this, and it is to meet people and share their stories of how they're doing it for themselves. And so I am super, super thankful that I got a chance to do that, and I'm very thankful that I got a chance to share it with you. If you would like to support the show here, easiest and best way to do it is just leave me a nice little review on Apple Podcasts. That would be very helpful to me, and I would really, really appreciate it. Until next week, I hope that you all have a very, very enjoyable holiday. Christmas Eve is on Monday. Christmas Day is Tuesday, so we will see how things go, but I may get ahead of myself and edit and have everything ready to go to publish on Monday. So it's easy. All I have to do is hit the button. But we'll see how that goes. So if I don't talk to you, have an amazing holiday, and I'll see you soon.